My talk today is called Becoming Present. Becoming present. So as some of you know, I have been moving here into Lake Oswego this past week. Very exciting. Yes, it is. I'm thrilled from Westland to here. And, moving. What a joy, said no one ever. I will tell you the joy of this experience, though, has been having our daughter live here with me. She flew in from Wyoming as sort of an early birthday time, and also a time to help me move and a time to help me paint. We did a ton of painting in the house prior to when the movers arrived, and I will tell you, on day 3, I believe it was, of painting, I was in the bathroom, and I was up on a stepladder, and I'm painting, trim, and I had it all taped off. And as happens, whenever I have a talk coming up, things sort of pop in throughout the week, stories and ideas, and they just sort of drop in, quotes, things like that. And when they come in, I always kind of stop, and I want to reflect on it and really remember it and hold it to share it with you. And I was up there painting and, thinking about becoming present, and these, ideas were all popping into my head. And then I sort of came to, and I realized that I had completely gone outside of the lines, and I ran down the step ladder, and I got a wet rag, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing a talk on becoming present, and I'm not doing a very good job at being present in this moment. Anyone? We try to be present, and all we can do is think of the shiny squirrel or start painting outside of the lines. It happens to all of us. I wanted to start there. This idea of becoming present to our lives. There's many, I teach a lot of classes on mindfulness and different ways to be present. There's lots of ways to look at this. But before I do that, I want to place in the center of this conversation, I want to actually start with the spiritual truth, which is the truth of this entire talk, the truth of this entire conversation that we're having here, is that you and I, each one of us, come from love. We come from love, and we come here, we incarnate here to be that love. That's it, And this love, call it God, call it spirit, quantum consciousness, the ultimate reality, the I am that I am, whatever word works for you. The Alpha, the Omega, and everything in between. That is the love I'm talking about. That's what we talk about here. When we talk about God, we are not talking about an old dude in the sky with a long beard who is rather moody. That's not the God that we understand. The God that we understand here, the higher power that we understand here, is pure love. No judgment. No good behavior awards, bad behavior, punishment, no guilt, no damnation, no fire. None of that is of God. None of that is of love. And none of that is in the conversation whenever we speak of God or Spirit here. It is only love. All of it comes from love. We someday will return to this love. And like every great tradition, every great faith tradition across millennia has taught, we are of this spirit. We are God's stuff. As the scientists teach us, we are of stardust, every single one of us. And when we become fully present with ourselves and with one another, we are able to catch a glimpse of that love. We see it in moments of human connection. You know what I'm talking about. Those moments when you connect with another human being. Happens for me a lot with babies and with animals and Mother Nature. We've all experienced that. That is when we are fully present, we experience the divine to a great and magnified degree as human beings. So how can we do more of that? How can we get more of that in our lives? More of that, less crap. Anyone? Okay. All right. Now, realizing that we are all of God, we too are human. In this earth, there is crap. And what we teach here is that God, love, the divine, is at the center of all of it, especially our humanness and our human frailty. So for a moment, I want to invite you to think about and gently notice, just gently notice an aspect of your personality, your human personality, the crap that you don't like. Just pick one thing. I know. Really? Just one? Okay. Pick one thing about yourself that you don't like. We all have them. We are all here being humans in this world of spirit, in this school of life. Just pick something. Maybe you have a tendency to be critical or to gossip, or maybe to avoid challenges. Maybe you're particularly hard on yourself. Whatever it is, whatever's coming up for you right now, that's what's wanting to be noticed. Just gently notice that. Notice that aspect of yourself. And now I invite you to notice how that aspect of yourself, and let's call it the current aspect that is ready to be transformed, how does that aspect of your personality keep you from connecting to others? How does it keep you from that spark of connection that I was just talking about? Can you feel into that? Can you see how whatever that thing is creates a barrier? It creates separateness between you and yourself or you and another person. Are you following? Right? Okay. Now, take a deep breath. And let's lovingly set that aspect just gently aside. Just gently aside. It's going to stay right there. We're going to come back to it. The great poet Mary Oliver wrote, "Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss beneath the water. Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss beneath the water." We often, automatically, without even thinking about it, label the moss beneath the water as not quite as holy as all the beautiful things. Ever notice that we do that? You know what I'm talking about? The thing is, the slimy, gross moss at the bottom of a river can be really yucky, but it's just as holy as the clear running water and the ancient majestic stones, isn't it? Right? In fact, the entirety of the whole river, all of its parts, even the bugs and the slugs and the icky stuff, isn't it all holy? Because it is all of God, of divine, of spirit, of source. And that is what we teach, right? That it's all holy. Now, the slimy moss may not be pleasant, but it's certainly not separate from the divinity of Mother Nature. Logic follows, then, that the mossy parts of us, or the aspects of ourselves that we don't particularly like, must also be included as holy. We teach that everything at its core, whether it knows it or not, is divine. In her poem, Mary Oliver writes that the moss beneath the water acknowledges that it's loved too, but here's the thing. Unlike the beauty of the river and the majesty of the stones, the icky moss that lives beneath the water manages in her poem to whisper that it's holy. This is so achingly brave, isn't it? We are being called to be achingly brave with our stuff. Yes. We don't like to acknowledge our messy stuff. Now I will call it our mossy stuff. But we don't. We don't like to acknowledge it. At best, on a good day, we may manage to eke out a whisper that our shadowed, mossy parts deserve to be included in the whole holy, we are all God thing, we are all of God thing. But in doing so, in doing that, that would require what? Dun, 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 self-love. Yes, that again. When we can, like Darcy just sang so beautifully, live like we are loved, like all of us is loved, when we can be present to all the parts of ourselves and still even then recognize, or perhaps a better word is remember, the holy in all of it. When we can take a breath and recognize that there is holiness at the center of that thing, underneath it, underneath that thing is love. Just waiting to be presenced in your life. There is a holiness at the center of everything. And sort of taking a breath and realizing this, recognizing that there is this holiness at the center of all things. It gives us greater permission to be present to it, and then the mossy parts of us become less scary. Because these parts of us are often scary. We don't like them. We don't want to show them. Oftentimes we have shame when we behave in unskilled ways, right? So, taking this and connecting it, in many, many sacred places all throughout Asia, just as you approach an entrance to a temple, the holiest of the holies, the holiest of the holy places, before you get inside that sanctuary, you will notice that surrounding the entrance to the temple are scary and often ominous statues that surround the entrance. I talked about this very briefly like 2 years ago in a talk, and I want to unpack it even more. So you literally have to pass through the doorway of some very terrifying looking statues and artwork. Inside there is a temple. What? What? Are you kidding me right now? You have to walk through that. Inside there is a temple. Are you kidding me right now? For what it's worth, I don't think that would help attendance here in Lake Oswego. In the ancient world, those scary-looking warrior deities were originally designed and intended to repel or to keep away evil spirits. The ancient world believed in evil spirits. And I think for us, our understanding here in New Thought is there isn't anything evil out there that is going to ever get you. Ever. There is no hell except for a hell of our own making. Right here. Because, as I established earlier, spirit, this air we breathe is benevolent, it is loving, it is on our side, and we are at free will to choose, to make decisions about what we are going to do with this life, with our stuff. Are we going to look at it and heal it, or are we going to bury it and feel shame around it? Which leads to a hell of our own making, which leads to things like unskilled behavior, addiction, all kinds of challenges. And what I love so much about this metaphor with these scary looking images at the front of a sanctuary is that really, if you think about it, we have stuff at the periphery of the living temple that we are always invited to step into. Are you following me? This stuff is the same as what is around those temples. And it prevents us from living fully into our possibility and into our life. Do you see? Yes, yes, yes. These unexamined places within ourselves keep us from fully entering the temple of unconditional love for ourselves and for others. And if we are not present to or compassionate with these shadowed parts of ourselves, our moss at the bottom of the river, we can't fully enter into the totality of becoming present and entering the temple, the sacred holy place within us. It's not a place out there. It's a place in here. We come to this sanctuary to be reminded every week that we carry this temple out into the world with us. Spiritual maturity requires that we not ignore the mossy parts. Quite the opposite. Now, let's go back. I invite you to once again just gently notice that aspect of your personality that you don't like, that you chose earlier, that you would like to change or transform. Consider allowing that moss to surface to the top and to be transformed. But here's the thing in doing this, my friends. Here is the thing that often we don't want to hear. Healing happens in connection with others. You can bring this up and you can look at it, but to heal it, it cannot happen in isolation. Anyone who is involved in any way with any of the 12-step programs knows this. We have a lot of 12-steppers who find us because we are a group of like-minded spiritual community that support each other's journey. We can't heal in isolation. Now, this would require what? This would require that we share with someone this thing. Oh no. Really? Yeah. If you really, really want to heal it, it requires that we share it. Now, if the thought of sharing this in any way makes you feel defensive, if you notice just that moment when I said that you kind of had little pricklies coming up, like, oh, I want to do it on my own. I'm fine to do it on my own. Thank you very much. If that defensiveness comes up or resistance comes up, and you want to push it back down, this defensiveness, like, no, I don't want to touch that. Thanks, Rev Shannon. See ya. If that's coming up for you, know that that's very human. That's a very common response to this. And if that's what's coming up for you, that's okay. Just take a breath. And I invite you to consider something that Byron Katie said that helps with this. She said, defense is the first act of war. Yup. Defense is the first act of war. When we show up defended, that inner state that keeps us from becoming present, when we show up defended, we are shut down right out the gate. We can't become present. An awareness tool for you, the next time you notice that you are being defensive in any conversation, I invite you to anchor this moment, take a breath, and realize in that moment, just remember that that defensiveness is an act of war on your part. It's an act of war against yourself. And I can tell you from experience that this awareness, this spiritual tool of just recognizing that is often enough to soften your posture and to allow love in. If you are a person who notices that you are defensive a lot, realize that is an act of war against yourself, and no peace will come of it. Just breathe and allow your edges to soften. My friends, I invite you to become present to all the parts of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, so that you can become fully present and you can enter the temple of your life. So this brings the question, how good are you at naming your stuff with another person? It's so healthy. It's so healthy to do. And we live in a society that doesn't teach us to do this. And I will tell you, it is not easy at first, especially if you have shame around it, which most folks do. When we name something, just know that I do this with a person you trust. This isn't a casual thing. You know, name your thing, share your thing with someone you trust, or it could be a practitioner or a therapist. And once we name it, we pop the power out of it. See what I mean? It's like a balloon, and it no longer has power over us. We set it free. This doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. If you're not practiced in shining the light on your messy, mossy stuff, start small. It could be as simple as saying to a trusted friend something like, I notice myself doing that thing again. I'm really working on that, and golly, I caught myself, I'm going to do better next time. That's it, right? You can start there and watch what happens. Watch what happens. Brené Brown wrote, if we share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame can't survive. If we share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame can't survive. Giving yourself the gift of releasing the shame around the thing allows you to become fully present to yourself and others. I invite you to try that this week. See what happens. Again, start small. I'm not asking you to bare your soul to someone unless you want to do that. But this is a spiritual tool. I'm inviting you to share one thing this week with someone you trust, something you're ready to release, so that you can step into your temple. And in the process, you become more present to your soul. And when you become more present to your soul, you are more present to God, to the divine. Now, becoming present, my friends, is a revolutionary act. Make no mistake. Becoming present is a revolutionary act. All the great spiritual teachers across time have taught this. Jesus of Nazareth, Muhammad, peace be upon him. I say that to honor any Muslims listening or watching. They all taught this. The Buddha, they all taught this. Being present, being fully awake to what is and to what is emerging is an act of revolution. This is an act of revolution. It is not to be taken lightly. Most people go through their life with a lot of moss that they refuse to look at, and it shows up in toxic ways. Yes, are you following? So to do this work is an act of spiritual revolution. An original meaning for the word revolution is an instance of great change in affairs. That's what revolution is, an instant of great change in affairs. We think of mindfulness, of being present, as a very quiet thing. And oh my goodness, yes, it can be gloriously quiet. but it can also be powerfully loud. There was nothing quiet about the teachings of the Buddha or Jesus of Nazareth or Muhammad, peace be upon him. They were revolutionaries. The Buddha taught that enlightenment was meant for all of us, not just the chosen few. Revolutionary for the time. Revolutionary. Jesus of Nazareth, in his very first sermon, Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, he said to ordinary folks, just like you and me, it was unheard of. He said to ordinary folks, you are the light of the world. He brought that revolutionary idea that God, Spirit, love works through us. Totally bad. There are kids here. Totally revolutionary. Right? Muhammad, peace be upon him, brought to Islam social and economic justice. One of the 5 pillars of Islam is to pay alms or to give money to those in need. This was the ancient world's social assistance program. He also established the very first, the earliest laws that supported women to be able to divorce and own property. I want to be very clear, the Muslim faith is a very different thing than the Islamic State in some Arab countries. 2 totally different things. But all of these teachers, and then all of the saints and the mystics and the spiritual teachers through time, taught that when we are present, when we work on this stuff, when we're able to release it, when we are present, we can receive, because the water is clear, we can receive guidance for revolutionary ideas that change the world for better. But we must start small. We are all here to experience enlightenment, to be the light of the world, so that we can lift up those in need. This is the mission. So, this week, I invite you to remember your divinity. Notice what part of you is keeping you from entering the temple of your life. And in an act of revolutionary love, share that with someone you trust so that you can release that mossy shame and live the life that Spirit wants for you. Hi, friends. I hope that our message inspired you today. I want to give you an opportunity to pay it forward. We are able to do all that we do here. We're able to get this message to you wherever you are in the world based on contributions. We're a nonprofit. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that, to pay it forward. You can click the link in the description box below or go to our website. No amount is too small or too big. We are so grateful. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Know that you are loved. Mwah. Have a good week.